All right, folks, well, welcome community, staff, and board colleagues to the facilities meeting February 19th, 2026. We'll go ahead and start off with a roll call to establish quorum.
Yes, Chair. On the roll call for the February 19th, 2026 Facilities Committee regular meeting. Director Barry is absent. Director Thompson?
Here.
Chair Bachelor?
Here.
Quorum present.
Great, thank you. I believe we also have interpretation for our conversation today, so can we get an interpretation check, Mr. Hollis?
Yes, Chair. For tonight's meeting, we have one language available for live interpretation. It is Spanish. We also have a closed caption feature available on Zoom that you can use by clicking the closed caption feature on your Zoom taskbar. With that, we will start with live interpretation, which is Spanish. I will lower all attendees' hands on Zoom. Please only raise your hand if you need the language being announced, which is Spanish. And I will ask Ms. Vargas if she can come off of mute and give the interpretation announcement for Spanish.
Of course. Buenas tardes y sean bienvenidos a esta reunión de las instalaciones de OUSD. Vamos a contar con interpretación simultánea al español. Para eso necesitamos que levante su mano y nos avise si necesita el servicio. Si está en persona, pues hágalo en persona. Y si está atendiendo por Zoom, puede utilizar el icono de Raise Hand o levantar la mano. Para las personas en el recinto, por favor, busquen al señor Corey Hollis. Él está distribuyendo los dispositivos para que ustedes puedan acceder a la interpretación. Una vez que se active el sistema de interpretación, en la parte de abajo de su ventana de Zoom, busque el globo terráqueo de Interpretation, púlselo y seleccione Spanish, y si no lo ve, busque los puntos suspensivos que dicen More, púlselos, seleccione Language Interpretation y después Spanish. Cualquier cosa estamos para servirles. Gracias. Thank you very much. Spanish announcement is done.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Checking the attendees in the room. I see nobody with their hands raised in the room. On Zoom, there are no hands raised for Spanish interpretation. That concludes our interpretation announcement. We may make a later announcement later in the meeting. And I pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I would just like to remind members of the public that we do have speaker cards that are located next to the door here, and there's also a bathroom key if folks need to use the bathroom, because we have a good amount of folks in person today. Next is we have I would like to make some modifications to the agenda, just because I know we have folks in the room and folks on Zoom that would like to speak to a couple of different items. So if we could, if you'd entertain me, Director Thompson, I'd like to do F2 first, which is the OUSD Energy Management Sustainability Update. G2, which is Garfield School Conversion Modernization. Then G1, which is the Facilities Master Plan. And then F1, which is the Facilities Committee Phase 2 Initial Property Evaluations. That way we can make sure that community voices are heard and folks don't have to be here all night long. So for folks who just arrived, just know that if you would like to sign up for public comment, the cards are located right next to the door. And we will get going on our agenda. All right, so next is the adoption of the committee meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve our minutes for January 15th?
Yes, I motion the approval of the minutes for January 15th.
I'll second that. Mr. Hollis, can you take a roll call vote on this item? Oh, I'm sorry, there's public comment on this agenda item.
There are no public comments for the minutes or D.-1. Proceed with the vote, Chair.
Yes.
On the motion to approve the January 15th, 2026 Facilities Committee meeting minutes, Director Barry is absent. Director Thompson?
Yes.
Chair Bachelor?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to move to the adoption of the committee general consent. We don't have any items under this section. Now we're going to move on to our first item, which again, because of the movement, is F2, which is the OUSD Emergency Management and Sustainability Update, Facilities Planning and Management.
Excellent. Good evening, committee and community. Preston Thomas, the Chief Systems and Services Officer, and I want to just connect this item really quickly to some other items on the agenda tonight. One is where the board is currently is we are reviewing the first draft of the Facilities Master Plan. We're having the first read of that here tonight, but also the board is going through a process around budget, restructuring our budget. And one of your largest costs in the in that budget is, I think it's a little over $20 million, is dedicated towards utilities. And so how we manage our energy program within the district is a critical variable that the board, it comes from the general fund. And so one of the things that goes hand in hand with the overall facilities master plan is this is an investment grade audit around energy usage across the district. And so you should see it as a complement to the facilities master plan. And one of the things within the presentation tonight, we'll talk about different strategies that the district can use to fund some of these energy management strategies. And so I'm going to turn it over to Pranita, who couldn't be with us here this evening. She's not feeling well, but she will be starting the presentation. And then we have folks from Wildan here who are going to support in the presentation in-house tonight. So Ms. Ramsey, if she's available.
Yes.
Oh, she is. There we go.
Good evening, committee and committee members, and thank you, Preston. So as Preston mentioned, the goal for tonight is to provide an overview of our findings from the investment grade audit. This is a recurring update that we bring to the committee around our sustainability efforts, as well as our energy efficiency efforts. We will be sharing how the audit aligns with the sustainability policy and the master plan, and outline some potential facility improvement pathways emerging from the analysis. Tonight, we're only seeking feedback. This is not a request for an approval of a plan to move forward. We're definitely looking for questions, comments, concern, and feedback. And I wanted to give a little bit of background. If you can move 2 slides further up. One more slide, please. Thank you. So the IGA, or the investment grade audit, was approved in June 2025, keeping in mind the district's commitment to clean energy that's outlined within the board adopted sustainability policy. The goal is to identify energy cost saving equipment upgrades, efficiency improvements, infrastructure opportunities, and measures that reduce deferred maintenance burden. One slide up, please. There are 2 teams that are supporting this effort. We have NV5 Clean Energy Group that is serving as owner's representative, and they provide independent oversight and technical advisory and ensure analysis, integrity, and alignment with our district priorities. And then we have the Wildan team, who is there at the meeting as well, who is our energy services partner, conducting the district-wide audit and presenting recommendations to the district for consideration. With that, I will turn it over to the Wildan team.
Hello and good evening, members of the committee and staff. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. You're going to hear from each member of our team here tonight, and I wanted to kick off introductions. My name is Carolyn Kiesner. I'm the Vice President of our West Region, and I oversee our California team. I'm going to hand it over to Mark.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Martinez, and I'm the executive leadership team, providing support to our local team and making sure we have all the resources we need at this stage of the project and as we move forward.
Hey there, I'm Stephen Gribble. I'm one of the senior project development engineers at Wildan and literal day 1 patron of Oakland Ice Center. Shout out Alyssa Liu. Really excited to be working on this project with you guys.
Good evening, Elliot Feldman, Senior Program Manager. Really excited to be here and working with you, and so thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to skip ahead just to one more slide, and yeah, just so wanted to just kind of recap a little bit of where we're at. So as Preston and Pranina mentioned, we have engaged in our investment grade audit, and we are at the 30% milestone. But just to unpack that a little bit for you all and what that really means is we've kicked off the project. We've met with various district stakeholders to understand the goals, the priorities, and the needs. We've started our preliminary audits. You have quite a few facilities in which we've taken a look at. We've started to identify the project scope that aligns with your goals, and you're going to see more information on that in a little bit. We've put together what we call a rough order of magnitude for the project cost around what those goals could be, as well as the savings, and then identified some funding sources as well. Again, we are wanting to make sure that we're aligning with the plans that Preston was just talking about. And once we have consensus at this 30% mark, then we're going to move through each of those milestones and complete the investment grade audit, presenting what could be a fixed firm project for implementation. We'll talk about that a little bit more on the coming slides. Just quick logistics. Can you hear us if we're not in front of the microphone? Should we keep shuffling? Okay. Yeah, well, we will shuffle some more.
Around.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so just a little bit of information at a high level around our process and the work that we've completed to date. So we kicked off our preliminary study back in August of 2025. Since then, there's been a lot of work we've completed. We've walked over 102 of your sites, identified scope at over 102 of your sites. We've done a utility analysis at over 102 of your sites. We've identified over 2.4 million in annual O&M and energy savings throughout your facilities. We've identified over $235 million in infrastructure improvements. We've also done some initial investigation around incentives, grants, and rebates as well. I do want to say thank you to staff that's been so collaborative and helpful in accessing all the sites. It's been a lot of activity, and everyone's been so wonderful to work with. Next, we wanted to touch on the identified project goals. So we worked with district staff and administration, and we asked, what are the most important goals that you would like this project to accomplish? And these are the 5 we've listed, and we definitely want any insights or comments on these goals that we've identified. So number 1, it's improved classroom environment. Goal number 2, alignment with district initiatives. Goal number 3, demonstrate fiscal responsibility. Goal number 4, standardization. And goal number 5, student and community engagement.
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, so as you can see, our projects do much more than just replacing light bulbs and fixing HVAC. We really try to have deep impact that promotes where you're trying to go as a district and aligns with the mission and vision that you all have. So any thoughts, feel free to jump in as we're discussing, because we want to make sure you're heard, as a facility subcommittee, and your input is gathered as we're still developing this program. Some of the key highlights that we wanted to communicate out to you all, and Preston mentioned this, but just from a gas and electric standpoint, the district spent $11.3 million in 2025. So it's a significant number. But what we also wanted to call out is, and you probably know this better than us, is many sites lack proper ventilation and cooling, which is a priority for that we're hearing for replacement. So the connection there is that to add HVAC, to add cooling, and to meet the proper levels of ventilation, it's going to increase your operating costs. Those bills are going to go up. We additionally heard that if you do that in a manner which it's done by all electric, or it's done by a decarbonization, so powered by solar, if it's not done properly, that could drive your operating costs up even higher. So what's critical to think about is you have these challenges of needing to add cooling while also controlling your costs. But we see that as a great opportunity because you're working with a great team far outside of just us as an opportunity to manage your energy spend and have the improvements. And really, that's the charge that we're after for this investment grade audit and hopefully for implementing a project in the future. Stephen's going to talk a little bit about our vision for solutions.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we are approaching our solution engineering. So we want to be really intentional with our design and our thinking towards, what scopes we might propose to implement. Part of that is, not wanting to put good money after bad. There's a lot of aging infrastructure, as we all know, and so we don't want to put new Band-Aids on old stuff, right? That's not a good spend of money typically. So we're not proposing things like new controls on existing equipment. Where there's existing controls, we'll propose to integrate with them, but we're not talking about new controls on old equipment. We're not talking about just straight efficiency measures for HVAC equipment either. We want to be really intentional with what we propose. So where we're not doing HVAC retrofits, we're also not proposing building envelope upgrades either, right? So we're really trying to be targeted with what we're proposing for you guys. We also really want to align our project approach with Oakland Unified's approach to bond projects. To the extent that we can align and integrate, that really helps from a funding and a timeline perspective. So we can, again, be intentional with our designs and approaches. So I wanted to kind of quickly highlight, what we have identified so far for the yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we have a few different categories of items, and within those categories we have kind of some sub-options of different approaches that we might take, and again, very interested in your feedback as to, which of those approaches we might take. So starting with LED lighting upgrades, so there's a huge lighting opportunity within the district, and there's a few sort of different categories of ways that we could approach that. You can kind of think of it as a good, better, best option with varying levels of first cost versus life cycle cost, and I'll kind of expand on those a little bit later. We also have a host of solar, photovoltaic, and battery energy storage system projects identified. Those kind of fall into two different categories. One is high return on investment sites that help support other project goals and project implementation. And then there's a second category of project type that's really more, less about the finances and more impactful to the student base. So that would be, carports or some sort of integrated design that would add cooling to blacktops or shade areas, right? So less of a financial piece and more of an impact piece, but still.
Yeah, and just real quick to jump in, Steve and I are both Bay Area natives and know your campus as well. And so, and we understand the work you've been doing around, I think it's the living gardens, living schoolyards. And so we understand, urban campuses don't have a lot of shade. And so solar and shade structures are really unique resources that can both lower your utility bills, but also bring much needed shade to sites. And so while those sites might not have the same return on investment as some of the other sites in the category above it that we were just talking about, we see tremendous value in also integrating them into the project and because of their ancillary benefits. So we feel passionate about that and just wanted to call that out to your attention.
Then we have what's considered retro commissioning. So I mentioned not putting new controls on aging equipment past its useful life. But there's a whole host of buildings, like 30 or so, that have existing building controls. And over time, those controls tend to drift, and they are no longer being operated or implemented in the way that they were designed. And so retro commissioning is a real low-cost, high-impact effort to bring those controls and systems back into their design specifications, or if the use case is changed for that space, align it with whatever the current usage of that space may be. And then lastly, we have a host of HVAC and associated infrastructure upgrades identified. And those can broadly be kind of thought of in 3 different categories, what we've called tiers here. So the first tier of category is pretty simple by mechanical terms, generally like-for-like replacements of existing equipment. So replacing an existing package unit with a comparable form factor, no real design changes. The second tier is requires some amount of modification. So that might mean we need to modify duct work or bring new circuitry or something like that. But functionally, same system design for all intents and purposes. So modifications, but not new design. And the third tier, do we need to? I know, I got it. Yeah, I got it. The third tier are systems that will require substantial redesign, both from a system level and from a supporting infrastructure. So those are things like your central steam plants, for example, that if you really want to bring cooling or ventilation in that space, you functionally need to redesign the system, right? So it's kind of a matter of, do you want to be deep and narrow, or do you want to be more shallow and broad with like the way that the impact is felt throughout the facilities, right? So again, would love you guys' feedback on how we approach that, and there's some level of like splitting the gap too, Next slide. Yeah. So here's kind of a quick breakdown for the lighting, at least, of what we mean by good, better, best. So on the good side, you're really taking existing lighting fixtures, you're replacing largely linear fluorescent or high-intensity discharge lamps with you're relamping them. You're utilizing the existing fixtures and putting in new lamps. Low first cost, high impact, limited upgrades in controllability, less discrete savings, but lowest first cost, right? The middle option, the better option, is kind of a hybrid between relamping and retrofit kits. So in the first scenario, you're really just touching the lamps. So if you have broken or discolored lenses, like that's not something that would get addressed. You're really just chasing the energy savings for that first option, right? The second option kind of addresses that middle ground where you do get some sort of retrofit action in there. So now we're talking about improving, aesthetics. All these options will also maintain or improve light levels across all areas. But you get some kind of improved controllability, improved fixture aesthetic with the retrofit option. The third option, which we would consider best, is considered to be luminaire level lighting control. So right now you have kind of zoned lighting control. That light switch on the wall, that turns the entire zone off, right? You have a single control point for a zone, whatever that zone may be, a room, a hallway, whatever, right? The best option is basically a complete retrofit of all the lighting fixtures that has controllability at the luminaire level. So each fixture has its essentially own control. So you have maximum controllability, maximum opportunity for energy savings. Of course, you add some complexity, right? So all these options are kind of trading, up from first cost to lowest life cycle cost, right? As well as some additional complexity. So that's, directions, options, flexible in our approach, but we would love to get your feedback on, what the district wants to see there. One of the things that we're going to be doing in the next couple weeks is putting together a demonstration installation of the various lighting options in concert with your facilities team. We've been working to collaborate with them to put in a demo so we can kind of see visually what the different lighting options look like and help you guys make a choice.
Do you mind? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Preston.
I just wanted to interject one piece on this, and just in terms of why I think the board needs to get all the information. We're talking about LED here. In about 5 million square feet of the district, you still have fluorescent bulbs, which have been outlawed now in the state of California because of mercury included with them. So you could still utilize them, but you need to have a commitment to replacing them. And I don't know if that's what you were going to say, Mark. I just wanted to jump in and say, there is some urgency around this from an ability to source, the ability to replace some of these lights when they go out. Our buildings and grounds team has definitely built a stockpile of fluorescent bulbs to support that. but we do have to commit to transitioning over, and the state has provided, PG&E has provided opportunities in the past to do this that were not necessarily taken up across the district, and it is something that we need to commit to. And that's one of the reasons why we're really excited to do this investment grade audit to figure out where the savings could potentially be, but there has to be a commitment to moving forward on that item. And I just wanted to name that because it is listed as a good, better, best, but it's also something that there is a time-dependent nature about replacing the lighting in our school system.
And because, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I've heard from you guys multiple times now that you want feedback. Would you like feedback as we're going,
Yeah, you're
or
fine.
kind of
Yeah.
towards the end of the conversation?
We'll take it now.
Okay. Director Thompson, did you have anything?
Well, yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
I was just thinking about the implication of the solar.
Yeah.
And how that actually interfaces with what we have decided as projects or goals for our district.
Right.
And so, well, first of all, let me back up. I
Sure.
just appreciate what you've given so far because it seems like it's really thorough.
Thank you.
And I just really appreciate that. But then going back to the solar option that we're talking about, I just wanted to make sure that there was a lot of communication between the facilities department and I appreciate your audit.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that there's a lot of communication because we're talking about spending quite a bit of money, for that conversion. And so I want to make sure that we're making wise decisions with what we're doing.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Great point.
I would agree to make sure that we're also using our measure bond, our bond funds in the most effective way, that we're not having to install something and then rip it back out to then install something better.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess when it comes to lighting, I think the fluorescent is nobody's friend for many different reasons. I like the idea of the last option, the best option, because I think about our educators that have classrooms in which they may be after school and only need light in one place, but then the whole room is lit up, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessary. Or sometimes needing quiet time, movie time, whatever, and being able to kind of dim the lights or control the lights in different ways to support students successfully.
Well, and just real quick to build
Yeah.
on that, something within the best solution that I've done on other projects is in a special needs classroom environment, there's color tuning lighting, and that can be dimmable. That has actually, I've seen firsthand and heard from teachers how beneficial it can be for their students depending on moods and depending on the different day that they're having. So yes, you are maybe spending more, but there are so many other benefits that can come with it. And it can be, a hybrid between better and best. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but we think it's worth taking a look at.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I was going to ask. What is kind of the price differences per each? Because, best and better could be a little bit different, or it could be a lot.
Yeah,
different.
to be totally upfront, I don't have that number right
Okay.
now, but that's what's going to happen, say, in this 30 to 60% mark of the IGA. And so as we get a little bit more direction from the team, as we, it may be something like 50% of the schools just go with the best option, and then the other 50, we are looking at the next level. That's where we'll be able to pass along the pricing for consideration.
Okay.
And obviously, Preston, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but we'd be happy to come back and present those estimates for your consideration as well. We just don't have the numbers to accurately answer your question at this point in time.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I just wasn't sure if there was a ballpark
Sure.
figure. But yeah, I also appreciate you uplifting special education, because I do think that those educators would benefit from being able to control the lighting situation more, especially for their kind of environment challenged students that would need that support. Okay, that's all I have for right now. If you want to, oh, and then the solar piece, I am really excited about too. I will say, I know the batteries have been a challenge in trying to get the parts for both batteries and solar panels. How has that changed, or is it more readily available now, or could the national politics be a challenge to getting the parts for those pieces?
Yeah, let me, I almost want to answer that question in a couple slides coming up
Okay.
as it relates to incentives. But I would say
Great.
we're actively managing it, and there is kind of a rush because everyone is trying to get it before a certain timeline, but I think we'll be able to better answer it in
Great.
a little bit.
Dr. Thompson had one more.
Yeah. Yeah, just one last comment.
Sure.
And this came up when Director Batchelor mentioned the good, better, best, options and stuff. I do want us to keep in mind looking at this through an equity lens.
Absolutely.
Because what happens is there's a perceived acknowledgement from some people that certain groups will get this better or will get more of this than other groups. And I just want to make sure that an equity lens is used as we decide where we're going to do and how we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we hear you loud and clear on that. Okay, great. All right, so perfect segue into the funding and some of the incentives. So what we have here is a table that provides an overview of essentially how the project could be paid for. And let me just say from a kind of a fundamental perspective, how I would recommend all my clients approach to this is let us get as much savings, as much incentives, as much low cost, no cost money as possible up front, bond dollars that you might have not allocated yet, deferred maintenance, anything possible before you have to go out and borrow to pay for the project, essentially lowering your cost of money to implement the project. And so what that looks like is, again, we've identified $2.4 million in year one cost savings just out of the utility and maintenance spend. Something to call out too is that's obviously going to escalate over time. So it's a pretty large number. We have identified about $6 to $10 million of incentives from the federal government for the what's called the solar investment tax credit. It's a little bit of a weird terminology, but if anyone has solar on their house, you essentially get a credit from the federal government after installing it. As a school district who is obviously tax exempt, that comes back as a direct cash reimbursement. As you were just mentioning, that is the sort of changing landscape around incentives. So there are some timelines that we need to be mindful of. As a group, we've been working through them and trying to plan and prioritize how we could meet those requirements and still be on our project timeline. And we think we have a plan for doing that. But basically $6 to $10 million that could be applied to the project that could buy more HVAC, your highest priority, or go down and less money you have to borrow. We really think it's worth pursuing and is a great incentive to apply to the project. Again, then if there's any bond dollars or deferred maintenance funds that haven't been spent that could overlap with this project, we're actively discussing that. And then there's the tax-exempt lease purchase, which is a low-interest financing option specific for energy savings projects like this. It's tax-exempt, so the financiers have an incentive to offer a much lower rate than if it was for the private sector. So net-net, it becomes a really great financial solution that's self-funding and can generate even cash flow positive on the back end of all of it. So as we develop our scope, that's how we're going to be structuring this for the district's consideration.
Great, and just to clarify, the 2.4, is that the state and PG&E or?
Good question. That's just primarily coming out of PG&E's electricity and gas. We have a very small amount coming from reduced emergency repair of HVAC replacement, but that's a tiny fraction of that.
And then the 6 to 10 is from the
federal government as the incentive. And again, that's a range just based on how much solar is installed. Yeah.
I forgot it now. Okay. Dr. Thompson?
Okay, great.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk about some really exciting stuff around community partnership.
And for the sake of time, I won't keep you alone here, but one of the things that's really important to us is that we realize that this opportunity gives us a chance to embrace your contractor community as well as your students. So one of the things we'll be talking about is we get a better feel on the actual scope of work. Those existing partners that you have in place today, we'll be embracing them as a part of this initiative. And then perhaps you have some smaller contractors in the community that for whatever reason have not qualified to participate in projects like this, we'll be reaching out to those individuals to the extent that there's interest in seeing what we can do to kind of bring them along, perhaps providing them an opportunity to be a part of this initiative as well. The other thing we'll do is this is a great opportunity to engage your students. Phenomenal opportunity. We talked about lighting a few slides ago. We plan to engage at some level your students perhaps in the auditing of the lighting and in the conversion of some of the retrofits. So those students that perhaps are in the STEM curriculum that may have some interest in helping understand how do you calculate an energy savings? How do you put a return on investment? We want to have that involved as well. And then when it comes to the actual implementation of the work, the students that may be interested in that side will engage them too. So this is further down the line as we develop and get closer to it, but understand our commitment to local participation with your business community, and then bringing along your students as a part of an educational aspect that this project can be used for as well.
I will just say that's amazing. So yes, that's what we want to hear. Thank you.
And so, discussion around key direction needed, next steps. And so what we're really looking at this stage, so we did our preliminary assessment at 30% design, casted a wide net, looked at a lot of different opportunities. Now what we're really looking for is feedback and direction on where we want to go with several different things we have listed here. But just to name a few, like the lighting options, good, better, best. What direction do we want to go with the different facilities? Funding, we need to understand what bond dollars can be contributed, what funding packages should we look at and put together. And then, moving forward, we also want to start engaging everybody around that business incubator that Mark just touched on and the STEM career and STEAM workshop engagement with the students. Let's see, go ahead.
Yeah, great. So yeah, we're getting close to wrapping it up. And again, we wanted to say thank you for the engagement, and it's been a really great conversation. We wanted to sort of end this with a next step and a timeline. And what we like to do is really work backwards. And as you probably know from a facilities subcommittee, so much of school construction needs to happen over the summer period. So we're very much thinking if this does move forward, this would be starting in summer 2027. Obviously, you have to think of DSA permitting, you have to think of procurement. And so really, to hit that timeline, this project would, the end of our IGA and presentation to you all for potential approval would look like probably end of summer, early fall. But basically, again, working backwards, the steps that we have to do from here is to finish the investment grade audit. And so we have an overview of what those additional milestones are. So you can kind of think of it as a design progression. We'll go from 30% to 60%, refining the scope, formalizing the engineering. Once we have those designs more advanced, then we can start bidding. It's our intent to bid to multiple subcontractors so that we're getting the best price on your behalf. We're going to do all of our quality control. We'll advance those designs more. There will be a formal presentation to the district to evaluate, confirm that the scope is right, and then obviously a presentation of that construction agreement, legal review, and the formal consideration of actually moving forward with a construction contract, again, targeting late summer into early fall. That does set us up well, again, for a target of summer 2027 installation. There are things like LED lighting that can be done on a second shift in the evening, and maybe we pull some of that forward to get those energy savings happening earlier. But that's sort of the broader timeline overview of what we're working on. And again, we're hoping to have some of these outstanding questions answered in the coming weeks to month and really, get rolling on the next steps here. Again, thank you, and Preston, I'll pass it back to you.
I think we wanted to give you a touch point with them. They've done pretty amazing work in the district. And so if you have any further questions, the next phase is really for us, staff, to kind of evaluate their recommendations and try to put together some packages for you all, for the board as an ongoing investment in some of these areas. And there is, I just want to name that there is incentive programs as they've named. We've talked about them before, the solar projects that are moving forward right now and that'll be coming online in April, before April actually, do have some of the ITC credits associated with them, right? So that would be dollars that are coming back to the district that then could be leveraged for a program like this. So I do want to name that, like, we're at this phase where we now have the assessment and now it's mapping out the plan that we would be moving forward. So any further questions you have, that would be great. Definitely open for feedback, but we're at this one milestone and we wanted to share out with the facilities committee where we're at.
Thank you. Director Thompson, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm just excited that you have selected this approach instead of going through the whole thing and then trying to give us going step by step in order to give us almost an update as to what's going on as you go through it, and then we're able to ask questions and get clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. I guess to the questions on slide 15 for us. So I appreciate the kind of thoroughness of the presentation and
Sure.
more information. I would like to, as we think of LED lighting, I would like to see if we could do the better for as many classrooms as possible and think and get an assessment as to what would the best for our special education classrooms look like
Sure.
and mean.
Yeah.
Because I know those, yeah, anyways.
Could I unpack
and then-
that just for a
Sure.
second? Because I
Yeah.
think it's a really good point. So I hear this a lot, and it's a good option, is classrooms, you said, for the better.
Yeah.
And then the best for special needs. What about an example like outdoors?
Special education.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Yeah.
special education. What about as an example of like an outdoor space or a multi-purpose room? Would you lump that with classrooms? Would that maybe be its own?
I would
Okay.
I would still do better.
Yeah,
there,
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Any of the shared spaces, I
Right.
think, yeah, doing that. I guess one question that I had is, you have HVAC in here a lot. What we've talked about as a part of the climate emergency resolution is moving more towards heat pumps, because that not only provides the cooling, but also provides heating. Is that something that you all have been looking at as a part of this process and just shortened with HVAC, or is that, would that change the
This
scope?
gentleman knows a lot more
Yeah.
than I do about that.
Yeah, all of what we're proposing is electrified options, so there's no new gas equipment proposed. So in most cases, that would be some manner of heat pump. There may be some other form factor that's not specifically that, but yeah, that generally would be the answer.
Okay. Yeah, I'm more inclined towards a heat pump, because again, that provides both, especially in days like this where it's really cold outside.
Yeah, anything that we proposed would be capable of providing both heating and cooling with the same system.
Oh, perfect, great. And then when it comes to solar versus BESS, I guess.
And ventilation as well. That's a key component.
Perfect, thank you. When it comes to solar versus BESS, I guess, what is the advantage of a BESS system versus just a straight solar system?
So the way that we've moved forward with rate structures in California is the CPUC wants to incentivize self-consumption over using the grid as storage. So they've modified basically the rate at which you are credited for solar that you put back onto the grid to make the value of that really limited. So what that does is incentivize the addition of batteries into solar projects so that you can in effect self-consume the power that you generate even if you're not using it at a specific point in time. So batteries now, they allow you to get a reasonable return on your solar investment. There's kind of two approaches, well, not two, but like there is arbitrage and then there is resiliency. And those are two different functions for the batteries, and they don't necessarily do the same thing at the same time. So arbitrage is storing your electricity when you don't need it and then discharging it at a more expensive time. So it's essentially a financial vehicle. So that helps the math work. Resiliency is where you use a certain percentage of the capacity of the battery to provide a backup function. That's a really expensive way to provide backup, and you have to be kind of targeted with how you approach it. And so just because you have a battery doesn't necessarily mean that you also have backup capability. You know, we have to kind of engineer what the correct solution is, and there's a balance between batteries for financial reasons and batteries for resiliency reasons. And there's, you have to kind of find where the sweet spot is for the district.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess with that, I would be interested in exploring the best options for solar storage. I would also, it would be helpful to know too if there's like specific school sites that, I'm getting at, like specific school sites that could have the battery and then feed into other school sites, like if there's that savings that we could have as well.
So there used to be a rate structure called NEM-A, which would basically a NEM aggregation where you could take multiple scattered sites underneath one portfolio and kind of combine their benefits, whereby like you could have a couple of smaller systems and maybe one larger load over here. You're not allowed to do that anymore. So there's not really a way to share benefit from one site to another. Like they have to be behind the same meter to receive the financial benefit. Obviously, this all kind of rolls uphill to the district and the way they pay bills, but like at a site level, you can't share benefit from one meter to another.
I guess
anymore.
I wonder, Preston, would like the campus, like Lockwood CCPA and Lockwood CDC, would that be considered under the CPUC one?
It
grid
really
site,
depends
or
on
no?
how the site is metered.
Yeah, really, it comes down to how it's metered, how the electric infrastructure is kind of
Okay.
configured. We do have a lot of that data. I'm not sure about that one specifically, but it really boils down to how the site's metered and where the load is. Like if you have a site with multiple meters, it even gets a little more complicated because you could have that load split between the 2 meters. It could be like this. It could be, so it's like there's, you have to kind of work through it on
I
a
think
site level.
at just a very high level, you could probably see what we're going to do is give you a very honest assessment if batteries make sense at each of the sites where we're looking at solar, and just be very transparent. Would we recommend installing it or not? And you may say, hey, we want to do it for sustainability reasons or whatever reason, and that will be your decision if you want to move forward with it or not. But we'll be very transparent. Does this meet your goals? And if so, that's great. If not, then we would de-scope it, and you can consider that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would appreciate that. And I think when it comes to the funding approach, I appreciate you all adding some of that information here because of what we're going through at the moment and because of where our bond is. I would also, I think it would be helpful to see like a phased approach of like, this is the things that we could do with like the free money, right? This is the things that we could do with the grants. And this is like the extra things. Because I think that would help us also not only utilize the the bond contingency if we need to, but also as we think about the next bond, including that in there as well. And yeah, I really, again, I'm very excited about the engagement with our small business owners as well as our students. I think that would be a great.
And do you mind if I point just to one?
Sure.
You just mentioned funding, and I just wanted to bring focus to that on page 15. That really what you're looking at is those are the different options that you have as a district to build the funding stack to do all the work that we're talking about, right? So there is money allocated in the bond, and there is potential contingency that could be leveraged for this. So I just wanted to name that, right? Like in the time frame that they're talking about. But there are other needs and priorities that are going to be identified in the facilities master plan for you to consider.
Right.
The second is other district funding sources like energy efficiency initiatives that might be offered by PG&E or other entities. That third bullet point, capital outlay or deferred maintenance funds. We know that like kind of the deferred maintenance fund is addressing right now some of the budget shortfalls that the district's having. So that is a consideration for you to weigh in. Those tax exempt lease purchases, I just want to highlight the term lease, that you can have short-term leases for some of those that actually allow you to do some of the projects under a short-term lease agreement. And we'll talk about that more, but I just wanted to name that there are multiple strategies that we can utilize to fund these, and that's kind of the next phase where we start talking through that.
And then the last question will also, the approximate dollar amount will also be part of that next conversation as well.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we're happy developing multiple scenarios and considerations and just putting them in front of you all and then funneling that up for a decision at the end.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, great.
All right, Dr. Berry.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm articulate right now because I did just get off a plane, but I'm going to try.
No problem.
And I only did one read of this, so it might be in here. I just tried to quickly look but couldn't listen and look at the same time. Is there a way that we can see how things might be mapped out across time? So like what implementation might look like, particularly in light of funding that might be available today versus later? And,
So I would say we would probably be more able to do that at a later stage at the like 60% mark. And so there's different ways to do it. We'd be more than happy to implement on a multi-phased approach. I've done 4, 5, 6 phases with other school districts. One thing to be mindful of is that there is obviously cost synergies to bundling it all together. One project management, one subcontractor, procurement all at once. But that's your decision to make. So as we get into more details around funding and potentially phasing it, we could definitely work with Preston and team to present what that would look like. But again, we want to be, communicative of, the added cost of a multi-phased effort, because sometimes it does just make more sense to push it together and implement it over a summer and into the fall all at once.
And then Preston, you mentioned the facilities master plan. So is the idea that decisions, say we bundle it, the decisions around what specific work happens where and when first, or later, with the facilities master plan inform that? Is that, what's the decision?
That's exactly, when you look at the priority 1 investments that are district-wide, that I just want to name in the top part of the T that we'll be talking about a little bit later tonight, is there is areas where you may dedicate a percentage of funding or some funding to address this issue, right? Because really what we're talking about, particularly with the lighting, is a deferred maintenance issue, right? That's been delayed to a point where now you can't even buy the bulbs anymore, right? So that's an example. Yeah, vintage fluorescent bulbs. So that's what I mean in terms of how, and if you think about like the phases and the timing that we're talking about, also as a future bond, in terms of what you're going out, you could package this within the future bond to address some of these identified items in an upcoming bond that the district might do, because we've been on pretty much an 8-year cycle or so with bonds.
Great, thank you. And we
Did that get?
have to move on because we have 3 other items to discuss today.
Thank you very much.
So thank you all so much. This is not a voting item, so to be continued with more conversations. And public comment on this agenda item. Mr. Hollis.
Yes, we have 4 public commenters for this item. How much time would you like to allot for public comment?
Let's do 1 minute.
1 minute each.
We have 3 other presentations.
Those 4
Come on up, everybody.
public members are Rachel Kirk-Cortez, Asada Olakbala, Flynn Rosenthal, and Andrea Dawson.
I'm going to go quick. So I really appreciate the conversation on the special education spaces and what more we could do there, because that shows that you're really thinking of the people in these spaces and not just these spaces as buildings. And so I want to emphasize that we have 2,100 classrooms without HVAC, maybe 30,000 students, right? There's a lot of classrooms that need it. And so when we think about the upgrades in that space, I just want us to think about the scale of the need across the district, and that if we're going to do major HVAC upgrades, we can't do that speedily enough to accommodate that scale. So I was curious how this plan integrates to the thermal comfort and air quality study that the district did in 2022. This plan says no major envelope upgrades without the HVAC upgrades, but I'm wondering about the minor upgrades. So Alameda Unified, and I put this in a comment that I made, they just did 5 times faster of an install on ceiling fans and a test on window tinting. So I'm wondering if we can learn from them what's been working there, and that might be a more affordable way for us to impact many more students more quickly than something like a costly HVAC upgrade. I also want to highlight the CAC KTEP program, which is a no-interest loan that could fund this through the California, I forget what CAC means. And then the last thing is, a group to engage would be PTAs. I know there are multiple PTAs that have raised funds to do this at their own school. That isn't really an equity lens, right? However, if they're not going to get the funding through the equity lens, maybe they could implement some of it with their own money, and that's a way, again, to serve more students more quickly. So I just want to put that plug in for PTA engagement.
Andrea Dawson, and I do happen to be a Citizens Bond Oversight member, but I'm speaking as an individual on this particular item. And I just want to say, run, don't walk, to get all these proposed solutions costed out to see what the order of magnitude is, Because initially I would say run, don't walk on changing all the lighting out to LEDs. It's going to be pretty inexpensive, and we could find probably the dollars to do that, even though the bond money is, a lot of push-pull right now, and we're really starting to have to leverage to get things done. But this segues right into the facilities master plan, and we have to get that done because the bigger item to me across the district is thermal comfort. That should be number one when we're considering what we're going to do at all of our schools, thermal comfort. And that's like the slide that's showing the middle school that did it basically without an intense change to the electrical system. Thank you.
Evening, thank you very much. Flynn Rosenthal, Oakland resident since 1991, project manager, but glad to see you folks are working on energy efficiency, just in addition to these very active elements that you're looking at, HVAC, LEDs, and so on and so forth. Just wanted to remind folks about actually one of the slides that was used on page 8 of your handout, which I believe was from West Oakland Middle School. That's a passive method of controlling overheating, controlling glare in the classroom, and also providing an upgrade to the facade and kind of look for the school. So I'd kind of encourage everyone to kind of keep those kinds of options in mind to augment what is also being done. If there's less overheating, the HVAC system you have to install is going to be smaller and have to do less work. Thank you very much.
I hope at some point it becomes a priority when any time we have families that come into the room, that they are considered the highest priority. We just had a whole lot of young people leave here, and even if they don't speak, the item that they are addressing should be something that we consider. I'm very disappointed so many people have left, young people with children. So you're talking about replacement, but the discussion that has to happen soon is the utility costs that we are paying. Utility costs are the second largest expense for California schools after staff salaries. Rapid hike rates will continue to increase. PG&E has increased in the last couple of years from 23% up to 64% in the last 3 years. Oakland Unified has experienced at one point a $1.3 million spike in a single year. Schools are increasingly relying on solar energy and battery storage efficiency. Now, I want to say this. PG&E has a program that's no cost, where they come in and give you kitchen low-cost energy recommendations. It's a consulting service. You don't have to pay nothing for it. So I'm just very upset about, we have a hard time getting parents to come to the meetings. We have a hard time getting parents to be involved. And when you see parents walking out of a room because they can't continue to stay with all these young kids, that is the number one that should take. And how much y'all paying these consultants?
Thank you, Ms. Posada. Now we're moving on to G2, the Garfield Elementary Facilities Construction Project.
Okay, great. So I will be going over a presentation. I'll go relatively quickly because a month ago we talked through some of this, but there's now a presentation that aligns with it, and some additional documentation. So is this ready to go, Mr. Hollis? All right. And I'm sorry, I'll try to keep, because you can't see it there. So so I'm going to skip through some of the, you've seen this, but the ask of the committee tonight is there's a resolution that accompanies this to move to the Board of Education approval of a revised scope, budget
Wait.
and funding plan for Garfield Elementary School rebuild and early childhood education expansion project.
You could pause for a second.
Sure.
Mr. Hollis, does it, because it's up for it's a voting item, does it have to be moved before the presentation starts?
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Is there a motion for this resolution for Garfield Elementary?
Yes, so moved.
Seconded. Go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
Great. Okay. So a couple of things in the agenda tonight. I'm going to do a quick recap on why we're pivoting the scope and some of the challenges that we had, but there's more documentation here to support kind of what we talked about. The vision for the future, a full site redevelopment, and the funding strategy and budget update. And there is an attached memo with this as well that has the resolution, but also there is a memo from Oakland Children's Initiative and First Five, and they'll be online to comment a little bit about the funding support for it. So let me just go through. This is actually a screenshot of the new school profiles that you'll see. And some of the things that yeah, I apologize. It's slide 7. Do you have a copy of this? I do. Okay, great. Slide 7. But one of the things that I just wanted to point out, as you heard this evening, is that, Garfield is a school that for HVAC was listed as poor. It does have heating present throughout the school, which is a boiler system. And there is no mechanical ventilation. So what that really means is that it only has ventilation through opening of windows. And then the percent of the building that has air conditioning or comfort control is 0%. So when you are talking about kind of the presentation that you were hearing before, and you're talking about being able to address it in a facilities project, this is kind of where we're looking at the facility condition to actually make assessments as to how to move forward with projects. So this is just a recap of something we talked through last time, but I just want to name that this project, given kind of escalation and some of the issues on the site in terms of interim housing, was always going to be over budget, right? So like you could see in the first iteration, it was over budget by about 2.9. The revised version is about 5.4. So there were some early indicators that there were problems with the Garfield project in general. Here is a couple of things. I'm just going to hit them at a high level. There's deep structural rehabilitation that's been needed, and that was documented in the facilities master plan. So I'll tell you, I'm in slide 10, since you can't see it behind you. Slide 10, or actually slide 9, and then I'll go through them individually. Tremendous amounts of the construction budget were going to be dedicated to the structural rehabilitation of the site and not any other changes to the building itself. There was a high cost of temporary housing. You would have to move students out of the building to the field area, into portables. That cost was about $12.5 million, which is a cost that is necessary for some facility projects, but that would be 31% of your budget, completely dedicated to temporary housing for the school site. That doesn't seem like it's a good investment of the bond dollars. The education specifications, there wasn't much work. You talked about lighting and other things for some of the classrooms. There would be very little that would be touched in the building itself. One of the things that I'll just note, there was going to be inclusion of forced ventilation and HVAC system. However, it wouldn't be impacting the building envelope, and it would have had pretty intense costs to the energy usage at that school site if we had moved forward with that plan. And that shows that it really wasn't aligned to the sustainability policy that the board has passed. Here's some of the details. I'm not going to go into each of them, but they're here for the record around some of the compromises and some of the structural issues. One of the amazing opportunities that came forward at this time was we were doing some of the work in the facilities master plan on early childhood. And Garfield is a school that currently has one pre-K classroom, and it has a TK classroom. What we started discussing was how could we expand the full range of services with First Five and Oakland Children's Initiative, and really talked about the high density of children 0 to 4 that live in that neighborhood. And every time we've gone to the school site and visited the site, that is very apparent by the families that sit in the room with young babies. And so that is a critical reason why we think that expanding to a full pre-K through 5 at the school site is a huge advantage to the community. Here's the long-term impact that you would see in terms of the number, and I'm sorry, I'll tell you, I'm on slide 15 at this point. That would add a full 120 additional students to the overall site in terms of pre-K and TK sites in those classrooms, which creates a full continuum for families. And when we sat with families and talked to them about it, this was something that was very, very important for them to create a cornerstone in the community that they could depend on for the next 7 years, and then to move into the next facility project that's just a few blocks away, which is Roosevelt Middle School. So here is the revised scope, and I will share with you this outline, and you'll see a rendering of this that I am on page 18 now at this point. The most viable option was to, on the left, you could see the dotted red line, which is the current, well, it's a little bit hard. That's where the current building rests, right? So we would be doing construction on the site, and the students would remain in the old building. The second phase of construction would be to demolish the old building and put the field in that area. So like there is 2 phases, but you're essentially recouping that whole 12.5 million by utilizing the current site while you're building the other site on the campus. Here is just kind of an overview of the campus replacement and the proposed program. And I just want to highlight the first 2 lines, which are pre-K, TK, there are 7 classes that would be dedicated to that age group. And then also that we would integrate in the special day classrooms, that the school would be designed to have 2 continuums from K through 2 or 3, and K through 2, and then 3 through 5, so that students would have a continuity of services at the school. And so that's where you're building with design and intention around those programs, which isn't something that we've been able to do across the district, where those special education classrooms don't actually have dedicated space. They're just housed in a typical classroom. So here is kind of the proposed campus replacement, a 2-story building that the first floor, which is I'm on slide 20 at this point, is the bottom floor would be dedicated to pre-K, TK, and kindergarten, with dedicated neighborhoods that would be for them in terms of play spaces that are associated right outside the door, right? The second story would be essentially for 1st through 5th. So you would have kind of a differentiation in terms of the way the campus is there. You could see on the bottom right-hand corner that there would be a multi-purpose room attached to the kitchen, so that could be used not only for food service during the day, but also it would provide, if you've been to the Garfield, they have very low ceilings, but it would actually provide a gym space for them to use for programming, but also after school programming, for weekend use, and some of our growing expanded learning time that we're doing sports in elementary now. There would also be a family resource center in the upper left-hand corner and a full library that's incorporated into the school. I do want to share is that, I'm going to walk you through the funding for this. And there is somebody online from Oakland Children's Initiative and First Five, but I do want to name that they've been our partners in this along the way. And one of the things that they have committed at this point is $19 million to the project to develop this early learning hub at the school site. And I don't know if are they online right now, Mr. Hollis?
I do see them showing themselves online.
Okay, great. Do you want to say a few words for Oakland Children's Initiative and First Five?
Of course. Thank you, Preston. Good evening, members of the board. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Hello, my name is Edile Menezes. I am the Director of Early Care and Education at First Five Alameda County. First Five uses a whole community, whole family, and whole child approach to ensure that every child in Alameda County, regardless of race, family, income, or immigration status, gets a strong start in life. We do this by working to ensure that policies, systems, communities, and schools support families and children by creating the conditions that position everyone for success. And it's because of all that that I'm here tonight to express our support for the Garfield project. The Garfield expansion aligns with the work we have been doing in deep partnership with OUSD ECE department. And just to provide a little bit of flavor to this and then give you some background about this the OCI investments, the City of Oakland has the privilege of local funding streams, the OCI, Oakland Children's Initiative, which is not only dedicated to expanding access to ECE, but also prioritize the public systems, including OUSD, for funding from this early education funding coming from OCI. So, and then First Five is the early education fund implementation partner for OCI. And then in this role, we contract with OUSD and fund the district's early education work, including, of course, the Garfield project. And since OCI implementation began in 2023, OUSD has received more than 18 million from the Early Education Fund. The current year's budget is nearly 27 million and include this year's costs for the Garfield project and another facilities project that has not yet been approved. And needless to say that OUSD has been an instrumental partner in implementing OCI goals and meeting the initiative's primary goal of increasing the access to free and affordable early care and education for low-income children in the city of Oakland, particularly the 3 and 4-year-olds. First Five is in support of leveraging OCI funds to support the district's ECE expansion plans. And of course, the Garfield project is a key moment of opportunity for OUSD. So OUSD presented this project to us, to First Five, about several months ago, I'll say last year, and presented to First Five and also to the initiative's accountability officer, and followed by a site visit at Garfield. It is, we noticed through that it is a well-situated campus that will benefit from the addition of OCI funds to integrate preschool, as Preston mentioned earlier, to integrate preschool and transitional kindergarten classrooms into the larger construction project. A little background about Garfield. I think it's important to highlight that equity is at the center of the work for First Five, and expanding access in the San Antonio neighborhood will reach a diverse community in one of Oakland's historically underinvested neighborhoods. 97% of the students are eligible for free or reduced lunches. They are in foster care, multilingual learners, or they are unhoused. And 98% of the student population are students of color. So we see the expansion of the Garfield Elementary School as a progress towards meeting OCI's primary goal of access and enrollment of 3 and 4-year-olds in Oakland. And there are about 2,700 underserved 3 and 4-year-olds eligible in Oakland, eligible for projects like that. So every additional seat represents progress towards closing this gap. So just in conclusion, First Five is pleased to speak in support of this project, and as this is an important resource for children, families, and communities in Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Menezes. I do want to name that there is an item that's attached to this that's formally, it is a memo that is from OCI that's signed by the financial officer, Jennifer Caban, that actually does approve the $19 million. And so that is an attached item that is there as well. We did want to walk through some of the, and I do want to name that First Five and the Oakland Children's Initiative, this is one investment, and I think they talked about a lot. We were talking about the Highland community, some of the replacements that were there. Those were also funded by First Five and Oakland Children's Initiative. So one of the things that I do want to walk through in the presentation is the funding stack that we are asking for in this resolution to shift the funding and increase the funding for the Garfield project. And so I'm going to go to slide, yes, it is slide 24, and I'll walk through it here, I guess. There we go. Okay, so you all can't see it, but we're on slide 24. So the construction budget for this project would be $75 million. There's the additional design costs are 28, making the whole project 104.5 million. I do want to name that last time we were here, we talked about an $18 million contribution, but because of escalation since the time that we first spoke with them, First Five and Oakland Children's Initiative have committed $19 million because they acknowledged that. So if you look at the funding, the board has already approved $70.7 million. The Oakland Children's Initiative has committed the $19 million. Then the two additional funding sources that we would bring into this, one, it becomes an expansion project, right? So there's two components of it that qualify it for developer fees. One, that we would be replacing the portables in the center of the campus. And two, the fact that there's a nexus between growing development and expanding the grade span for the school. The district at the time, I would say, like, if you go back to the last spending plan, there's about $20 million worth of developer fees, but the district was having a hard time associating it with projects that met those criteria for developer fees. So far, we have increased the CCPA project with $13 million worth of developer fees. We're also we added $3 million to the Melrose Leadership project with developer fees, and we're now allocating an additional $5 million in developer fees towards this project. And that's important because it is probably the most restricted funds that we have, and it is an allowable expense for this project to move forward on. And it doesn't impact any of the Measure Y bond allocation. It really uses a funding source that is probably the most tightly regulated. And we do get additional funding from the city. Just recently, in the last month, we've received another $500,000, and those developer fees are really associated with the added housing that is added to the city of Oakland. So there's a percentage that the Oakland Unified School District gets. So that's that line item. And then the other one is the state reimbursement. We've talked a lot about eligibility and OPSC. There is $9.8 million that would be dedicated from Fund 35 to this project to fill out the scope and match the contributions from OCI. So that is the funding structure that would be moving forward. Now, I will go back to one of the slides that I just wanted to name. And I'm sorry, it's back one slide. I just want to remind us where we are. This has moved into the design development phase where we move towards construction documents, and these estimates, and you heard them talk about it earlier tonight in terms of with the Willdam proposal around the investment grade audit. The closer you get to actually going out to contracting, the tighter the numbers get, and the closer it gets to the actual price, right? And you have two directions you can go. One, you can start limiting the scope, so you can reduce the budget and what you're going to buy for that. So that usually is square footage or changes to that in terms of reducing the overall cost of the project, or you can adjust the budget upward. In this example, we're adjusting the budget upward to provide a totally different scope for this project. So I just wanted to name where we are in the project, and as it gets bid out, you'll get more precise around the exact costs. And that's with any project. And then finally, this is kind of where we are in design development, Q4 of 25 through Q2 of 2026. So that would be through kind of June of 2026. And then we would get the construction documents in Q2 to Q4, and that's when we would submit to DSA. And so that's I'm jumping around on y'all. So the final one is just, I'm going to slide 26. I do want to caution y'all, this is just an initial drawing of what the site could look like, because sometimes when you see it from the top view, it doesn't give you a good feel of the way the school would be. This is a draft rendering of the building exterior. So you can see the two different, this is from the playground view. If you're looking from where the current campus is, this is the backside view of the campus. You would see kind of the first floor would be those early childhood wings. All the way to the front would be kind of the multi-purpose room, and the entry to the school would be on that front side. So this just gives you a feel of what it would look like as a full campus, because we're at the place where we now understand what that layout would look like. Here's another view from the front with the multi-purpose room and a mural on the front of the library area, and then the administrative space for families to enter in that front space. So that just gives you conceptually where the architects are right now in this design. So next steps. We've presented it to the Facilities Committee in January. We have presented it to the CBOC, and we have a representative from CBOC here tonight. We're presenting it to you all as a Facilities Committee to vote to recommend approval for the full board, and then it would move forward on March 11th to the full board for final approval if the committee decides to forward it on.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and take public comment, if that's okay with my board colleagues, before we chime in. Mr. Hollis, who's on public comment?
Yes, we have 3 public commenters. It's Andrea Dawson, Asada Olukbala, and Dan Schmitz.
Okay. 1 minute.
Yes, Andrea Dawson, representing Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, which I am a member of. We met last week, and all 5 of us, Viola Gonzalez, Chair, and Andrew Nielsen, Vice Chair, John Jones III, a Garfield parent, and Sam Davis, a former school board member, and myself all believe you should move forward with this. Really, our only comment and concern was that it took so long to get here, that there should have been a deeper dive in the beginning because time is money, and we should have been figured out we needed a new building sooner than later, because in the last master plan, this was the first or second, I think it was second only to McClymonds of the most efficient building in the whole district. So we need to move as fast as we can on getting those kids this new school. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Dan Schmitz, a community member near Garfield. I volunteer in the garden. I also want to ask you to support this proposal. As the woman just said, it's long past due that this facility is upgraded. I've watched it for years. I've watched the facilities just kind of degrade, the lack of community access because of the lack of, just access. The community can't properly use the space. And so I feel like it's a really important time to do this. I feel like they've done a great job putting together things that really just make it a compelling project. As a homeowner, I have an old house. I've tried to fix my old house. You know what? The cost overruns are real. And thinking about trying to rebuild the old facility to have it meet modern standards just seems like an untenable solution. So going ahead with the full rebuild seems like the best option. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I think it's irresponsible of the presenter for First 5 to come here and represent that money is being available. That process has to be created where it goes before a body and it's approved. Now, it could have happened, I don't know, but I do know that the Children's Initiative is meeting on January the 22nd, next Thursday at 4, and I'm looking at their agenda, and they don't have anything related to giving Garfield money. They don't give money to schools, they give money to OUSD in a lump sum. Now, they're making a special consideration, but I'll be at that meeting to find out what is going on, because I looked at all the other meetings that they've had, and they don't meet that often. And there's been no, before the body, the commission, they have to approve all the spending. And there's been no spending. Now, you got to commit, and I mean, people talk about it, we're going to work it out, but it hasn't happened. And so I'm concerned, because I know how y'all screw McClymonds around. And I hope Garfield doesn't have to go through what we're going through in terms of projects don't get started, money is not available, so forth and so on. So if it happens at McClymonds, it can happen here. I don't know why they are saying money is available when they don't put, he said he has a document. He should have put that in the presentation, the documentation that he gave.
Thank you. Board colleagues? Director Barry?
I was just going to follow up on that. So, because the letter is attached, but can you explain how we should interpret the letter?
Mr. Hollis, would you mind pulling up the attached item so that we can at least, this is the memo, but there's also the first 5. Yep, there you go. So, okay, so one of the things, if you look at the layout here, and it is true that the district does get the funding from through First 5 is the agency that supports the implementation of it, but it does come from the Oakland Children's Initiative. In this memo, and you could see that it's signed off by the accountability officer from Oakland Children's Initiative, that the Garfield Childhood Development Center, the $19 million will be allocated to the school district in 3 payments. And you could see that in the 25-26 school year, $3.8 million, in fiscal year 26-27, $6.9 million, and in fiscal year 27-28, $8.3 million. So it's over the life of the project. In each of those fiscal years, we would be getting an allocation, and that would be baked into the budget that the district receives from Oakland Children's Initiative. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Director Thompson? It's over there, Mrs. Sada. No, but it's over there. Okay. Sure, Director Barry.
And you don't have to answer this today, but I want to introduce it. Just thinking about how likely it is, or what work needs to be done, said differently, in order for us to fill all 120 seats that are made available. And I saw that the capture rate, I might be misquoting, I think it's like 58% for that neighborhood, meaning we might have work to do to sort of like recruit within that neighborhood, but also to sort of like across the district. I wasn't on the mic, but okay.
Thank you, Director Thompson.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's a personal thing for me because I taught at Garfield many years ago, and I know what it's like to be in a 3-4 accommodation class, and it's extremely hot in the afternoon. Of course, your 3s go home, but your 4s are there, and you're still there with the 4s in this sweltering room. So I understand that concept. I'm excited that it seems as if things are moving pretty well. And I'm excited that you talked about a total bill as opposed to not a total bill. And I think a total bill is really where we need to go in order to facilitate the comfort of the students in the classroom, the utility of moving back and forth, especially between grades, and then also understanding, and I'm glad you mentioned the capture rate, because understanding that there are individuals in the community, and in order to actually get more of them into our schools, I think our school has to be inviting. And I think this is the kind of thing that will actually make it happen.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just agree with both my board colleagues. I'm very excited about this project. Having driven by the campus a few times now, I'm like, oh, I can see it, especially the garden in the back. And so I also really appreciate, because often as public entities, we don't work together. And so I really appreciate the collaboration with not only the Oakland Children's Initiative, but the City of Oakland around that parcel that's there. And so it's really, I think that shows how we can efficiently work together to maximize those public dollars to support our students. And I think to the point I think Director Thompson and Director Barry were making, I think a new facility is going to fill those seats. But we do need if there is any other sort of support, either with, any other sort of support to make sure that those seats are filled, that would be great. So we should vote on this item, because we did public comment, because we have 2 other items left. Mr. Hollis, can we take a vote on this item?
Yes, Chair Bachelor. On the motion to, on the adoption by the Board of Education upon recommendation by the Facilities Committee, which is to approve of resolution number 25260102, revised scope, budget, and funding plan for the Garfield Elementary School rebuild and early childhood education expansion project. On the motion, Director Barry.
Yes.
Director Thompson?
Yes.
Chair Baxter?
Yes.
Item is approved.
Thank you. So just to recap, that is a unanimous vote from the Facilities Committee, and that will be moved to the full board in March 11th. We don't have a lot to celebrate in our district, and I'm really glad we were able to celebrate that. Okay. Thank you. Moving.
Why we have to keep coming back here talking about McClellan? Why do we have to come here every meeting and talk about McClellan? Have not started the project since 2021.
Moving on to item G1, 26-0305, which is the Facilities Master Plan. I believe this is also a presentation.
Yeah. I am going to turn it over to Pranita Rambasi, who is online, that will be starting this presentation. Thank you all. Pranita, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Preston. So it's not Pranita Rambasi, Executive Director of Facilities Planning. We don't have a formal presentation. We do have a memo that outlines what I'm about to share. We do have a draft of the master plan attached, as well as included, posted on our website. So I'm just going to provide brief presentation on where we are and what's included in the draft of the facilities master plan. I'm very excited to be presenting the draft of our 2026 facilities master plan as a first read, discussion, and feedback this evening. This is intentionally a working draft, as we are in the stage where your questions, reactions, feedback, and guidance are very critical to shaping the final plan before adoption. The goal tonight is to receive feedback and ensure that the plan is clear and aligned with the district's priorities before we move forward. This plan is a long-term planning framework and is meant to be used as a planning tool to provide shared, transparent basis for decision-making about facilities investments over time. So what's new and important in this draft? As you're aware, we have initiated this process and it's been over a year effort. There has been comprehensive and robust engagement. The draft master plan does present how students, family, staff, and community input has informed the master plan, with an emphasis on earlier, deeper, and more student-centered engagement than past efforts. This plan integrates updated 2025 data and assessments. These assessments include facilities condition, educational adequacy, capacity and utilization, system deficiencies across the district, along with a rough order of magnitude, or to say so, dollar amounts associated with the deficiencies when you address it currently in 25-26, or if you over time are unable to take care of those deficiencies, what those costs would look like by 2040. It does align with facilities planning along with enrollment trends. There are several equity indicators that have been included within the draft, along with long-term fiscal sustainability and financial opportunities from the state. It includes context on the city's planning and development efforts to inform our overall decision-making process as well. It also introduces a clear investment framework, as we've been calling it, the T-structured framework, to distinguish between district-wide focused improvements, and these are in 3 tiers. And you have a high priority, medium, and a lower priority. There are major modernization and then transformative rebuild or replacement projects. So this is your T structure, with the T at the top of the T being your district-wide focus improvements, and then deeper investments through major modernizations or transformative rebuilds or replacement projects. It also explicitly addresses water quality, including lead and water strategy, mitigation, and long-term management. in terms of the general decision-making framework. So how do we use all of this information? The core purpose of this draft or the master plan is to move towards a more consistent and data-informed framework. I say data-informed since it does not replace the community need or the board decision-making aspect of the process. So think about using this information as a planning tool to help answer some of these questions, such as where do limited capital dollars have the greatest impact? Where does a modernization make more sense versus a full rebuild or replacement like we just talked about? How do we balance district-wide needs with deeper investments at fewer sites? Along with this, the team has also been actively working on two products. One, to create an interactive web page or a website. We have published the draft master plan on our website, and we're working to make this more accessible and easy to read and more interactive. We will also be including a dashboard that will be coming in the next month, which will reflect what we've been calling as the school profiles that are included in the appendix section right now. Within the draft, we've included examples of three campuses, just to be able to show what these school profiles would look like and what information will be provided through those profiles. This includes enrollment, demographics, capacity, and utilization, facility conditions, assessments, educational adequacy, along with a rough order of magnitude cost estimates to address those deficiencies. So the final draft or the final version of the master plan would include a plan, which is a report, as well as an interactive website and a dashboard. So you are able to slice and dice the data to make some more informed decision. So that's it for tonight. We want to bring this draft and really looking forward to hearing from you all and getting feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Rambasi. I would like to see if Ms. Andrea Dawson would like to come up and say a few words about CBOC, because I know that you all reviewed this document, and I think you were also on a part of an ad hoc committee, if I'm not misunderstanding, that took a deeper dive into this document. So I don't know if you had any thoughts you wanted to share with us.
Thank you. So, yes, I'm representing CBOC this evening. Viola Gonzalez, who's the chair now, could not be here, but an ad hoc committee made up of myself, Andrew Nelson, and Viola Gonzalez spent some time looking at this document, and basically what our big, let's just call it a concern, because we don't see it quite yet, is this idea of the dashboard, not only for the facilities condition, but also the equity lens. We feel like it should be so connected to all the backup. In other words, the way I put it is you have one sheet, and we've given an example, and we sent, I believe, Chair Gonzalez sent you all our notes on this, and we used San Francisco Unified as the index, and they took all the major systems and at each school site, and it's got a grade or, the deficiency. And so if you look at that, and you can go alphabetically, or you can, you could choose how it's set up, but you could do it for elementary, middle, high, and pre-K. But the point being is that a layman could look at this and see what schools are the most deficient and what the deficiencies are. Is it structural? Is it thermal comfort? What is it? And then, in addition to that, if you have an educational equity lens, the same thing, a dashboard, because they've done a lot of good work, and there's so much information in this, but you would put the two together, and you would be able to make decisions that truly address equity across this district. And ironically, we use Sacramento City Unified School District, which is also in the memo to you all, that you can click on theirs, and that was done by a group called DLR, and they've done master plans across the state, and they're actually being quite touted throughout the state now for their look at the equity lens side of it, in addition to the facilities condition index. So those two together, their board is making what they consider really honest decisions on equity, and you keep the politics out of it. I'll just say, that's my word, you keep the politics out of it. So And so those were our big takeaways from it, and it's in the memo here, and so you can, read into it, and you can ask us more questions about it. But lots of pictures and all that, that's really nice, but at the end of the day, got to get down to the data, and we hope that there also is a map that's readable that you can see where all the schools are, and you could click on it, and you could open the 40 pages of report on, say, Garfield is a good example, or McClymonds is another example. You could look at all this and see what exactly the condition of those schools are and what the equity side of it is too. So that's what we think needs to happen in this that we haven't seen yet. So,
Great.
okay,
thank you so much. Public, board colleagues, public comment? Do you guys want to comment first? Okay, public comment on this agenda item, Mr. Hollis?
Yes, we have 3 speakers. It's Rachel Cortez, Andrea Dawson, and Asada Olagbala.
Okay. Come on up, everybody.
Okay, so first, I want to start by saying thank you, because this plan, and Pranita, thank you too. We have been participating in the feedback on this plan since May, and I will say, especially for the HVAC section, I think that you've heard the community and that you really reflect what the community is asking for. So just thank you for that, because I know that that's a hard line to walk. We really are curious as the community about what the status is on things that we can do now. So would love an update on what's happening with the bond sale and how that relates to work that can be done this summer. Understanding that this plan is going to inform a decade of work, there's the reality of students needing to learn now, and that we as citizens are paying for the current bond, and our kids are in school now, and they'll be out of school, or at least the school they're at, by the time that some of these projects come to fruition. So just would love that update. And then, man, I lost my train of thought. So one thing that when I read the plan, the demographic data tells a really good story, and to me it told the story of closing schools in the hills based on where the demographics of Oakland are today and where they're going. I know that the current school board is not interested in closing schools, but we can't upgrade all schools to where they need to be when 75% are fair or below in their ratings. So I just love to hear more comment on how that is, and how we as a community can take an equity lens towards school closures to make sure that it reflects the data, the really compelling story told in this plan of where schools might need to merge or close based on current and future demographics.
Thank you.
So you have 21 schools with less than 300 children. Brookfield, this is from 24-25, 133 kids. Burkhalter 191, Carl Munch 151, Dewey 125. Just giving you some of them. Grass Valley 182, Matt West 199, Horace Mann 200, 279 for Westlake, La Escalita 274, Madison Park. I'm not going to read all of them. You cannot continue to run schools with these low populations. All through the area of the Bay Area, districts are dealing with deficit. San Jose, I think, is closing, can't remember the number. It's a bunch of schools. They closing. Now, here's your problem. The state told you can't do it on the backs of black kids anymore. You can't touch some of these schools because of that. That's why you are hesitant about it. But at some point, you are taking care of schools with less than 150, 190 kids in them. Keep saying that and see what's going to happen. I'm going to be around God say the same. I'm 80. To come back and say, I told you so. You're going to have to start closing schools. And you can't do it on our backs. You closed over 16 schools over the history of closing schools that were predominantly African American. You can't do it to us anymore.
Ms. Dawson, did you also want to provide public comment? Or you're good? You're good. No, you're fine. You were signed up for public comment. That's the only reason I asked. Yep. Great. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right, board colleagues. Director Barry? I will choose. Director Barry?
I'm trying to manage how I take up space. First question is around vision. So it's very clear that the idea is that the facilities master plan supports and advances, is informed by a vision, strategic plan. I believe strongly that the vision at OUSD is currently unclear, in part because we have to radically change what we do because we cannot afford what we've been doing. So I just want to make sure there's a process of like continuous calibration so that this facilities master plan makes sense after all of the work that we need to do on visioning and the like. So just curious, I guess it's a comment and not a question, but if you have any thing that you can share on your conversations and planning that you're doing with Sandra or Dr. Sadler, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. I think, do you mind if I kind of take it as a question and add a little bit more? I do think that kind of what you heard in terms of the framework, this is more of a decision-making framework for the board, right? And I would agree strongly that one of the things that is, and we'll probably add this case study in here around the Fremont story, right, as a transformational project, is that a lot of times people are saying that, you know, I've heard this often oversimplified. Oh, we just built a new field, we built a new school, and look what happened. It went from a school of about 700 to a school of 1,200, right? The story underneath that was, you know, Tom Sheriffheim, before that Emiliano Sanchez, and Rosemary and Nydia began working on the school design and the program far before the facility project launched, right? And so there was a unified vision around what was going to happen to that school. And then the school was built, the CTE labs were integrated into it, and then the school is now at capacity and has a wait list. And so I do feel like there is a robust conversation, and I think you're seeing that in the Garfield project, right? It was initially designed in a way that it was rehabilitating and modernizing a building, but now we're able to add so much more to that project. And the board is going to need to think about what is the future state of the schools to match future facility projects, right? Because really, all the ones that are currently baked, and I will say this, and I've heard this mentioned here in comment, is that, you know, McClymonds High School has 300 students in it right now, right? We're building a new facility, we're upgrading and modernizing that facility to house 650 students. What is the programs that's going to bring students and families back to that facility? And there is an opportunity there because there's a 3-year window before that project will be completed. You do have so I do believe it's part of it. And one of the things in the facilities master plan, and I can point to these points, is that we need to have a conversation with the next generation of large modernizations. What are those schools' academic programs going to be aligned to the facilities? Is it arts integration? Because you would want to have robust art classrooms within that in an elementary school. What is the middle school? And I was hoping that Mr. Hollis, could you pull up the one page just, and this will get to actually one of the public comments around the way the dashboards will look. Can you share this part? Okay. So this is, there's Garfield. Can you roll up to?
What slide is that?
It's not a slide. It's actually that's page 150, 153. Can you scroll down a little bit further? Elmhurst, there we go. Right? So if you could show the top portion of it. Okay. So one, I do want to name that there is something wrong with the board districts. It's not matched on all of them. I think this one is correct. So it's in, Director Thompson, it's in your district. But it, like, you can see that there are some errors, like the year of first construction clearly at Elmhurst wasn't 1978. It's 87-year-old building. So there are some things, and this is why we want to put it out for people to catch those ideas. But notice that the current enrollment is 783 students. Family choice rate is 91.7%. So that means for every seat that we offer, almost it's a 1-for-1. Families are signing up for it. There are still 1,347 middle school aged children that live in that neighborhood, right? So they are not capturing the entire neighborhood, is not deciding to go to Elmhurst as it currently is designed. The number of students that are currently attending from the attendance area is only 35.7%. So what does that mean? That means students are coming from other neighborhoods to come into that school. These are all variables that the district should be considering in terms of what's the programmatic match, what is the, what does it have a long-term viability? And clearly in this neighborhood, there's a huge number of families that could be attending Elmhurst, right? So then if you slide down to getting to some of the equity factors, and this would be in a dashboard, you could see some of the beginnings of that. You see the demographics of that school community. You see the unduplicated pupil percentage is 100%, which becomes some of the foundation. Yeah, I'm sorry. I really wish that, yeah. You could see where the projected enrollment is currently. You could see that it's projected to decline. But there's still going to be enough kids in that neighborhood to support a robust middle school, right? And so you could see how much OPSC funding is available. That is what's available to the school site. That these comes from the state. The $5.2 million is associated with that project. So if we just select that as a project, that 5 to 7 years down the road, you would get an additional payment back from the state. So that, what's that? But just the next page, and this is all the information that you'll be able to put school sites side by side. If you scroll down, you can see that its structure, its HVAC is deficient. And actually one of the most challenging things, I just want to name this, was addressing the HVAC issue. Because the way that the general industry talks about HVAC, they talk about it as HVAC, like it's all one thing. It's actually not, right? We have heat in a boiler system, mechanical ventilation in some, but some are just passive ventilation through windows, right? This building, you can see only 8.9% of the building actually is air conditioning, right? Where? It's in the portables, right? That's why teachers really love portables, because portables come with HVAC units associated with them, right? Doesn't mean that the learning environment is better. It just means that they often are affiliated. So you can see how it breaks down each of the systems here, and that will be in a dashboard that sits side by side. So you can select 2, 3, 4 schools within a neighborhood or a community and make some decisions around how you want to structure your bond dollars or how you want to think about restructuring the district. So it has taken a little while to get to the place where we have all the data in one place. But the big difference between past master plans and this master plan is that we will own all of this data in our own data warehouse, which is a huge distinction. So if there's a future dashboard that you all decide, and you say, hey, it would be really helpful as we're making this bond list to have a dashboard that does A, B, and C, we'll be able to add that to it. And so I looked through the first iterations of the dashboards today. Those will probably go live, and Mr. Embassy can talk to the timing on it. But those will go live before the second read that you all have, so that you can see kind of the full robust nature of some of the data sets that are there right now. So I know that was a long way to get to the question, but I wanted to show you some of the facility side data, but there is still this piece around what is the academic programming.
Thank you. Yeah, what I'm hearing, my playback, is in order for this plan to maintain coherence and to be effective, you need board direction. That's what I heard. Roger that. And then on page 22, you list some of the other tools and resources. Notably, feasibility studies are not on there, and maybe because it's like so broad and not a specific thing. But one of the reasons why I bring it up is because I think there is this, I think our ability to do something with what's here is contingent upon some of those pieces and helping the public and the board understand what some of the key steps or milestones we may have to navigate in order to actually implement this, I think would also be helpful. That's a comment, I guess. And then I really like how in the facilities master plan, there is commentary on what the implications might be for future bonds and measures. The one that stuck out to me the most is the early childhood one, because we have this existing, we have access to Measure AA or OCI, and that made me think, okay, so what if there are opportunities for OUSD to join in advocacy with other organizations? In my day job, I already know that there are counties across the state who are also doing some early childhood work. Maybe it doesn't make sense for Oakland to have its own measure and Marin to have its own measure. Maybe we all need to partner on a state bond or measure. And you know, I'm always thinking about the city relationship, so just wanted to see that more, or at least hear you talk about that in this scope.
Think that is, I do want to say the spirit of partnership with the city. Really, that foundational conversation started happening here in the facilities committee, and that is what has been leading to a robust conversation with OCI and First Five around some of those investments. And I fully agree that one of the reasons, and the Wildan proposal that I know that you came a little bit late and maybe caught the tail end of it, but there are other opportunities in different places to get funding. And I think the state, one of the biggest issues with the state, and it's an example actually of the opposite of what we were talking about before, right? The state led with a programmatic investment in early childhood, right? But they didn't actually have the facilities figured out for how do you support TK throughout the state of California. And you have issues around, toileting and things like that are challenges with younger students, that there hasn't really been the infrastructure to support a programmatic element. So it goes both ways, right? So I do think that we are always looking for it, and you can see it named there, collaboration with the city of Oakland. And one of the factors for those major modernizations that is listed in the master plan, I just want to elevate it, is that one of the criteria for a major modernization is proximity to city parks, right? Because there's a way that you can concentrate the types of investments that the city might make in their park infrastructure with actually the school setting. And so when you go to other cities and other jurisdictions, you see how there's a much tighter alignment between the city of Oakland, like the city and the school system. And that's the way that you can notice that a lot of our schools have actually been designed that way. The infrastructure just hasn't been integrated as tightly as it could be. And we are in conversations with the city right now. Garfield project is a particular place that we're talking about it, but we're also talking about it in Ira Jenkins. We're talking about it at Sobrani Park as well. So there are areas where we're having those foundational conversations.
Great. Dr. Thompson.
Yes, not a question, just a comment. I appreciate this document, first of all. I really do, because I look at it in terms of 4 things that can actually help us. Number 1, of course, looking at equity. I think that's extremely important. Number 2, projection of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. The third thing is the depth of conversations that could actually ensue as a result of this document. I think it invites individuals to actually have a say about what's being done and how it's going to be done, and then for whom it's going to be done. And the last thing is something that I'm going to align with what you just talked about, because I thought it was wonderful, so tangential to that, the partnerships that I think this document, it holds the possibility of talking about where partnerships can be developed in order to facilitate the building of what we need in order to draw more students into OUSD.
Thank you.
All right. I don't have a comment. I'm really excited to get through the plan, read it thoroughly as the deep dive committee did. And yeah, I'm interested to just see where it takes us as a board, because I know that you'll need direction from us to figure out some of those next steps. So, but process-wise, it's going to come back to this committee for a second read and adoption?
And then you decide at that point if it meets the standard with the dashboards and things like that as to whether or not you're going to continue to discuss it here or whether or not you want to move it on to the full board for either approval or for discussion as well.
Okay, and then, so the dashboard will be ready for us at the second read?
Yes, absolutely. Prior to that, you'll have access to it so that you can go into it and the community can actually see it as well. I think what we've been finding is that we have been getting feedback from the community, and it's been very helpful as people have been reviewing the plan. And some of the comments that you heard tonight were very aligned with some comments that we've heard, and there's some divergent ideas, but that's the important part, to like be able to make sure that we're telling the full story around the facilities master plan.
Yeah, I think to that point, I think it'd be really helpful for the second read if we could have some of that information from what you all have been getting from the public. I also think what you just did was very helpful, because I saw some of those numbers and charts and I was like, I don't even know where my eye can begin to have a conversation with this document. So I am wondering if we could create like either short videos of how to navigate the document, or like kind of a graph of like what each section means, so that folks in community can really be able to access the document. And I wonder, with the dashboard, if we'd be able to do some translation of the document as well, so that folks can see it in their home language versus just in English, because I want to make sure that the community is really able to really thoroughly be a part of the discussion around it. And I know that for the, I guess I do have comments, for the master plan, you all did a lot of engagement with our students as well. I wonder how we can continue to do that. I don't know if there's like a 2x2s with the student board directors, or conversations with ACC as well. I know that they could have some input as well as to their thinking around what the dashboard can look like, and also how to engage students around being able to like research that on their own. Because I could already see a teacher being able to have this be a project of a student. Those are for students that are looking for their final projects.
Can I add just one piece that actually came up? I just want to lift it up from CBOC. The two chapters in the master plan that are probably the most critical, and what we heard is like, don't bury the lead, is that to create like some one-pagers that are specifically around the targeted investments, the T, like what are the clear priorities that the master plan is calling out, so you don't have to get lost in all the documents, but there's a one-pager that says, hey, these are the areas that are priorities for the district that are coming up through the master plan. So that'll be in development and ready. And then also the second part of it is like those transformational projects. What are the criteria? What are the things that the board should be evaluating? Because I do want to say that there is a second, and I really do appreciate around the board direction around programming and listening to community and figuring out what the future academic programming is, because you are in a very short turnaround after you adopt the master plan. It becomes the framework for the project list that you develop for any future bonds. And right now we're in we're at the 75% phase of the bonds in terms of getting the dollars, but it is something that we should start planning as soon as the master plan is adopted, and talking through what are the strategic investments you want to make and how can they accelerate some of the academic outcomes that you're trying to achieve across the district, similar to what happened at Fremont High School.
Yeah, what you just said just tapped into the ongoing concern that I have, which I already spoke about, but just want to reiterate. It concerns me that the moving forward or advancing the recommendations for phase one without clear direction. So I think we should very quickly we need a little bit, even just a little bit of clarity about where we're headed before I would feel comfortable with moving forward.
Can you say more about that? Like, so I can pull up, is it around the district-wide investments or what? Because I can speak to that right now, but I just want to get clarity around what the question is.
As we begin to operationalize the work, we're going to get really specific about where work is happening and who's going to benefit from that work.
Yep.
I think, before we start implementing. And even in, how can we even operationalize it if we don't know whether this will be a school district of 85 schools or a school district of 65? And I just gave a bad example because I think it just plays into the conversation that is inevitably coming up about school closures. And I do want to be careful about this because there is no direction and no plan for that. But people are developing narratives because they're getting data, and things look and feel a certain way to some communities and a different way to other communities. And so I think it's important and responsible for us to provide some clarity to drive the conversations that and planning that people are already having in their homes.
So one of the things that we heard loud and clear, and I just want to name this from our study sessions, was it wasn't to be a school consolidation merger, but it was to give you the foundational data. And I've watched this go through different cycles, whether it's the blueprint or, kind of the 3 Rs or whichever iteration has happened. And it's gone back at least a decade and a half when I've this conversation. This is designed so that we can so there is no additional work that staff needs to do to provide you the information that the board would need, that it's all there. Yeah. And we heard from CBOC that there were some, questions about why did you put this data in here around California relative to other school districts of similar size, is so that no staff member has to do the heavy lifting again, that it's all there in the plan. It's just pulled out for how you all might want to use it. And there's lots of ways you can utilize the data. So if that's not apparent in the plan, please, if there's...
I do think it is, but it is also mentioned, so it is reiterated so often that we read the words and we're thinking about it. And I think that the low enrollment, deficiency of buildings are just 2 reasons why you might close a school. I kind of want to just change the narrative. There's another reason, which is what are we building? What's the academic programs that we want to provide? And I think that will help socialize a different experience for our community when it comes to making use of something like the facilities master plan.
All right, with that, we will end this item and move to F1, 25-1251, which is the Facilities Committee Phase 2 Initial Property Evaluations. I'm sorry, wait a second. We did public comment on, okay, thank you. Okay, yes, go ahead.
And I will turn it over to Pranita again. She's online. And there's a memo that accompanies this. It's just really naming the process. The Facilities Committee and the board had asked us in the feasibility study to come back with the Phase 2 conceptual properties to think about for asset management. And so I'll turn it over to Pranita that will describe that to you all.
Thank you, Preston. Good evening again, committee and committee members. I'm Pranita Ranbise, Executive Director for Facilities Planning. As Preston mentioned, tonight is a procedural next step as it relates to Resolution 26-0178 around feasibility for Phase 1 and launch of Phase 2.
If it's not, then don't worry about it.
The resolution that was adopted by the board authorized for a feasibility study for Phase 1 properties, which was presented last month. We have launched that process. It's 3 properties, 1025 2nd Ave, Ralph J. Punch, and Lakeview. Tonight, we will be talking about launching Phase 2 assessments and valuation. What we are seeking from the committee is to review the recommendations that staff has identified for Phase 2, provide feedback, and then recommend advancing them to the board for consideration as it's outlined in the resolution. This is not an approval for a development plan. It is an approval to conduct an initial valuation and assessment for Phase 2 properties. As I mentioned, we have launched Phase 1 feasibility study. We have begun with the technical due diligence, the programming and concept designing, financial feasibility analysis, as well as the interim use considerations. Similar to the first step that was part of Phase 1, for Phase 2, we are launching to begin the valuation, high-level assessment, comparative data gathering, which includes a neighborhood analysis, early identification and constraints and opportunities. And this information will then help inform the long-term strategy for properties that are identified within this phase 2, which is phase 2. In terms of identifying recommendations for properties within this phase, we looked at several various factors through a structured screening process, and I just wanted to name some of these factors that are included in the memo. We looked at the parcel size and ability to support a meaningful project. Within the resolution, board had identified the development opportunities for staff to consider. So we have looked at the parcel size to support that level of a project. General plan designation, zoning capacity, preliminary housing yield potential, state opportunity map or resource area designation. Again, looking at city's general plan and how that fits into the context of where these properties are. Legal ownership or regulatory constraints, prior feasibility work that has been completed on some of these properties, and then current use or occupancy of these properties and constraints. Our goal was to be able to prioritize 3 to 4 sites within phase 2, consistent with the board resolution. So the sites that we have identified are Golden Gate CDC at 6232 Herzog Street. One of the reasons, or 3 reasons why we identified the site, was sufficient size to support housing. Zoning and general plan suggest residential capacity, and it represents a viable near-term evaluation candidate. We identified Piedmont CDC, which is at 86 Echo Avenue. It's located in a high resource area and under state designation. It is a strong competitor or strong competitive position for affordable housing tax credits, which again, looking at the financial aspect of the site. And then large enough to support a meaningful development program and strategically important from a funding competitiveness standpoint. We have also identified Old Chabot Observatory at 4917 Mountain Boulevard. This is slightly a little more complex than the other 2 properties because of the significant factors that we have to take into account in terms of the property ownership, the leasing currently on the site. It's zoned as an open space. There's potential wildfire and environmental regulations, and the topography and the historic structure at the site. So these were the sites that we've named, identified for phase 2, and we're recommending for your consideration. Along with this, we are also recommending reviewing prior studies that have been completed for Edward Shands Adult Education Center and former Tilden Child Development Center. This would then provide a full comprehensive asset management assessment and valuation, almost like a asset management plan that staff has been talking about. The only property that is not in phase 2 or phase 1 is Bond Street, which is a relatively smaller site in size. It's approximately 0.14 acres. I believe, yes, that was the only site that I wanted to name additionally. Phase 2 would then clarify whether these constraints are prohibitive or whether these are viable options for further feasibility studies. We're requesting this evening to receive your feedback on staff recommendations for these sites as part of phase 2, and then to advance it to the board for further consideration.
Thank you. Board colleagues, any comments, questions? Dr. Berry?
To be transparent, I didn't realize we were leasing Chabot. So why is it on the list?
I'll take that, and then Pranita, if I'm not. It is under a lease agreement with the City of Oakland where it's one of the $1 leases where we're not really paying any significant amount of money for it. That it does have a long-term lease with Oakland Unified School District, and other board directors have lifted it up in the past as a potential opportunity to partner with the city for affordable or workforce housing. And there's a lot of open space regulations in that area that you would want to explore to see if that's even a possibility. So that's why it was listed, and it was talked about in several study sessions that we had.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have the same question, but maybe asked in a different way. Because there are within this report, there's also, again, discussion of like high wildfire environmental regulations and whatnot. And there's historical structures that are present as well. Those seem like significant impediments into doing anything with the property. So how long is the lease that we have with the district or with the city for Chabot?
I'm going to phone a friend. Pranita?
I can look it up if you give me a minute, but I think that is exactly one of the intents, is to be able to do an initial assessment to be able to say these are the challenges or these are the opportunities, where there may be restrictions and where we may be able to leverage how to best use that property. Like this is exactly that study.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I'm just concerned about is like us using our money to do a study on this, finding out that it's maybe not as helpful, and then we've potentially wasted money on a site that we could just give back to the city. Because quite honestly, like if it's going to continue to be vacant, I'm sure that we're spending security costs on it. I'm sure we're like there are costs that we are undertaking because it is a vacant building.
I do want to name it's not vacant. That is where your tech services department is housed currently. So I do want to name that it does have a district use. That used to be
Community Day?
That used to be Community Day.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so there is an old observatory that is there. There's actually the first workforce housing. There was one unit that was there that used to be the observatory keeper that was used by B&G for a period of time to watch the site. It's our first investment in workforce housing. It no longer is. But so there are several different areas of the property. And this, I do want to name, this is significantly different than the feasibility study. This is a very low cost way of understanding the zoning, regulations, impediments that might be there for the district and the city if they were to move forward. And so it would, I think just in terms of why we're recommending it as the properties, is the district has a series of vacant properties right now, right? So your asset management plan will include an understanding of what the district can do with all of its assets. The first three are going to have a feasibility study where we'll go much deeper into what's possible on those sites. But without looking at all the facilities, it's difficult to have a full, robust asset management plan. We do have, and have heard from the board, additional uses for some of the schools as non-public schools. The asset management plan will identify the types of schools that could be used for non-public schools, right? There will be an assessment that goes along with it to talk about future uses and future needs as community centers, as different locations. So like this is really addressing your vacant sites in the district. And so
I guess the other question that I have is, now I remember that, yes, tech services, and then we also put in a new floor or something in that building because of the amount of equipment.
That's right.
That we were going to put into the building. I guess the other piece of this is, where would those folks be housed and where would that equipment be housed if it wasn't at Chabot? So I hope that that's part of it. I also want to get to Edward Shands, because that's one that I hear from community a lot about. So what were the previous recommendations, and how did those recommendations inform the decision that the board made on that property?
Pranita, do you want to take that or do you want me to take it?
I can take part of it. And so I can answer one question that you did ask about Community Day, the lease. It is a 60-year lease, which is until 2080. It's the Community Day OUSD lease at the Chabot Science Center. And then the second part of the question, I think the preliminary study that we did for phase one is very similar. Like that was the level of assessment that was done for both those sites, Edward Shands and Tilden. There were definitely some opportunities identified for housing. And I can't recall if it was affordable housing, but I know there were some opportunities for housing that were identified. I believe there was a neighborhood analysis done as well in terms of from a city's planning perspective and development opportunities or development centers where these properties fit. I can't seem to remember the recommendation. There wasn't a a financial or a fiscal analysis as part of that assessment that I can remember. And so that would be something that would be as part of this phase 2 is that property valuation. Yeah, Preston, am I missing anything?
No, I think that one of the things when both of those properties went through a 7-Eleven committee, and I was not present at that time attending to those, but like, I think the value, one, they are still in a lease currently with folks that we are exploring our options with them. But I think it would update the board and the district around what are the current, like in reviewing those feasibility studies. The environment has changed significantly since those studies were done like 6 years ago. That like, how has the landscape changed? What might those properties be used for in the future? And we're talking about the Tilden CDC area that's just below the Tilden campus and the Edward Chan's building. And now the Edward Chan's building, for example, has had a fire in it, right? And had encampments within it. So like, what does that change in terms of the value for the district, whether it's the current developer that's working with it and there are some challenges with progressing that forward, or any future development the district might consider at that site. So I don't think you need to go through all of the deep study that was done in a feasibility study, but just a review and updating the information for the board on those 2 sites.
I guess so what I'm hearing is when I see review, it's like, I'm looking at this document that's already been built, that's already been written. But what I'm hearing from you is, no, we're going to do like another assessment that's updated, that has more information, more updated information around like the now versus what it looked like before. Okay. That was the only thing that was tripping me up, because I was like, I don't want to be looking at things that are old. That doesn't make, it's not helpful.
Pranita, did you want to add something to that? Yeah.
No, that is absolutely correct. It's just based on the current conditions, based on the challenges that we have been made aware of, and then based on just the development opportunities that have changed, just to Preston's point, the market analysis. So just looking at it from that lens, not just reviewing a report.
Okay, thank you. Is that anybody else? Okay, board public comment, Mr. Hollis. Anybody signed up?
Yes, Chair. So, Andrea Dawson and Asada Olagbala.
So let's go over the big screw up with Piedmont. It was recommended by the principal at Piedmont Elementary that you use that property, and continue to use it as a child development center. There was a waiting list for children wanting to be in that center. You ignored it. You gave the property to the city of Oakland, paying nothing for it, with the expectation that a joint project between you and the city would become a public library. That didn't happen. Nothing happened. City spent $700,000 for a feasibility study. Nothing happened. So a part of what was recommended that you do is use the facility for housing, for teacher housing. That was ignored. Why was it ignored? Because of favoritism for the white people who lived in the city of Piedmont wanting that space for a library, and you accommodated that pursuit.
Andrea Dawson, speaking as an individual, although I am on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And I remember the Chabot lease. And so what I'm going to say is I think it's really important to do this feasibility study. This is a deeper dive. I read the contract. And it segues into the master plan because there's an opportunity for revenue generation from a number of these properties. And these are not talking about closing schools. These are talking about vacant sites. It's really important. And then one other thing that I would say on behalf of CBOC, because this is what we believe, is please honor in doing this feasibility study what the board has already approved for 1025 Second Avenue, and that is the Tay Hub, something to do with youth for this school district's community, not anything else. And I will say that historic sites they're not on the national or state historic register. It's local, so it's negotiable with the city. It is not that big of a hurdle. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all the discussion for this item. It's not a voting item, so we're done with it. Yay. Now moving on to H, which is public comment on non-agenda items. Mr. Hollis.
Asada Olakbala.
Created a document for board consideration on June the 18th, 2025, summer facilities projects. For McClymonds, you are going to be renovating the kitchen, starting the whole school modernization during the summer of 2025, and turf field replacement. That didn't happen. None of it happened. What they call kitchen renovation is they brought in some new kitchen equipment. That was all. Then you come out with another recommendation that you're going to start the project now. Oh, and you spent $72,000 to move the children to half of the school and take that furniture and other equipment and store it. $72,000. The kids have been sitting in half of the building since the beginning of school. You're saying now that the project might start in April. The whole process started for this modernization in 2021. And now you're projecting that it's going to be finished in 2028. I'll be back and keep saying the same thing. Y'all going to sit there and look at me like, oh, what we going to move on to now? You excited about that?
Thank you.
Don't say thank you. That's insulting to say thank you. What are you thanking me for? Just say nothing. Don't do that. Don't act like something's okay. It's not okay. So just be quiet.
Moving on to the second to last item, which is the introduction of new legislative matters. Any new legislative matters? Colleagues, community? Okay. All right. Excited for J, the adjournment of our meeting. Thank you.